Welcome to Project Talk, the MPUG live web radio show on the MPUG Web Radio Network. I'm Matt Davis, and along with my co-host John Riopel, we're going to take your project questions, open the phone lines, and have some fun with Microsoft Project. We'll be answering your questions live and on the air and from the Project Talk email bag, reaching into the Project Talk toolbox, giving away some fabulous prizes, and much, much more. Project Talk is brought to you by PM Providers, driving results with project management solutions, and by BMO, specializing in PPM solutions built on proven Microsoft SharePoint and Microsoft Project Server technologies, delivering cost-effective, enterprise-grade hosted services for businesses of all sizes. Check out BMO's hosted PPM solutions at bmopro.com and get a 10% discount on BMO's cloud services using referral code PMProviders10. Our topic today is Smarten Up with Business Intelligence, getting the most from your project server. Now, if you'd like to participate in the show, you can dial in if you don't have your headset going. There's the toll-free number and access code. And then if you'd like to participate, join the conversation, or ask a question or offer a comment or whatever it is, just type it into the chat panel. And if you'd like to join the conversation live on the air, type in your comment or question, then raise your hand using the little raise your hand tool. And when you hear your name, we'll unmute your mic so you can join the conversation, just like talk radio. And of course, anyone who participates live and on the show will receive a stylish MPUG t-shirt or other great prize. So welcome to I guess it's October edition of Project Talk, and our topic, Smarten Up with Business Intelligence. And good afternoon, I guess, to my co-host, Mr. John Riopel. John, are you there?
Yeah, I am here, Matt.
Excellent.
Welcome.
I can even hear you. Excellent.
This is a good thing.
It's always good to start off with, yes, we're all here. That's a good place. You know, showing up is like 90%, right?
Well, and of course, and the other part is we need to at some point talk about the Penn and Teller of project management thing, because you know, as we both know, I'm not silent.
That's true. That's true. But you got to admit, the look thing. I mean, you know, people say it to us all the time. You know, when we're on the occasion when we're actually in the same room. Which, of course, we're on opposite ends of the country today. It's the the magic of web radio technologies that allow us to do this. So, but sure, maybe we'll find another way to do that. But let's talk about business intelligence and Project Server. You want to kind of get into it a little bit here and
I do today. I do. So the things we would like to cover today, I guess. Is a little bit about the OLAP Cube and how Project Server builds the cubes, and possibly what happens in the back end with these cubes, right?
Right.
And where that data comes from, how does it get in there, and so we'll kind of go through a little bit of history on the cube, building process, right?
The world of OLAP.
Yeah, the world of OLAP. Yeah, exactly. The second part we probably kind of want to go into is the BI Center. This is business intelligence, so we're going to use, for those of you who aren't up on the latest Microsoft acronym, BI stands for Business Intelligence, and we'll talk about, some of the reports and the capability that we have in Project Server to drill into the data that you might get from your project schedules and other things. How do we get data connections? How do we actually make a connection with these OLAP cubes via either Excel or other reporting tools that are out there? Excel services, right? So, it kind of brought up that subject a bit. So with the old 2007 and earlier in Project Server, a lot of the reporting on the cube was done right through the browser, if you recall.
That's right, yep.
So we'll talk about some of the differences there, and, and what this new Excel services reporting capability is bringing to the table. And then, of course...
Quite different. That's right. Quite different.
Yeah, quite different, right? And there's a number of things with Excel, that we can do, obviously, because it comes out of the box. So, there's graphing and pivot tables and all kinds of cool things and formulas that we can build on that side as well. And then, of course, Our last couple of subjects here are going to be performance point. What does that mean? You know, so Matt's going to bring us through performance point and sort of talk about what can be done on that side, and you know, and that brings into KPIs, scorecards, and dashboards. So you know, some of the cool. Hey, all right. So now you have data, but let's make it look neat, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Make it so it's actually valuable, and you can drive some business decision making, decision support, that kind of stuff.
Sure. So there's a number of you know, this is a fairly in-depth topic, I would say.
It's ambitious. It's ambitious for the hours we usually are.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing about us. We don't shy away from ambition at all. However, you know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to cover here. So in the need of moving forward, I would say, you know, if you can hook me up with the project server, Matt, then
I'll absolutely do that.
Maybe we can get started here.
All right, I will say just quickly before we do that you know, these are not the only things that are available to you in BI Center. You can also do Visio type reporting and other types of reporting. These are just the ones that we chose to focus on today because, you know, we only have so much time, right? So there you go.
Right.
So we are going to hook you up with the BMO's hosted project server. So I think you can drive and take it away, Mr. Riopel.
I don't think I can drive, so.
Really? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Okay, we can fix that.
Right.
Try it again. I will give you, yes, you have keyboard and mouse. Go for it.
Okay, I now have something.
Okay.
Maybe. This is the wizardry of technology here when you can't find the mouse, right?
Yeah. Small detail.
I'm still not going anywhere.
All right, let me get you there.
All right, thank you.
So we'll go to server settings.
So I'll guide you around. Does that work for me?
It's going to have to.
So, and then if you can bring me to Enterprise Custom Fields, I'd really love that.
Sure. So we're going to go in here in Enterprise Data into the Enterprise Custom Fields and Lookup Tables.
Right.
Okay. I think you got the mouse now.
I do.
Excellent.
Nice. So out of the box in Project Server is a number of fields that come with the installation, right? Like sample business needs, sample proposal date, and other things. Now these fields are then created so that you can, you know, start to use the project for your Project Server for a number of different things. Matt has covered PDP pages, in other words, through the Portfolio Server piece on one of our other shows. So I don't really want to get into that too much, but you know, these fields can be used for that data as well as just general project custom field data that you might want to, you know, track for either a given project or a given department. Remember that you can define how you want to use these custom fields. So they're as simple to build as pressing the New Field button here, and we can create a new field, and I'm just going to drop some in here. I'm actually not going to save the field, but we'll walk through a little bit about, you know, what it is and how to build one. You define the entity, in other words, where you want the field to occur, either at the project level, the resource level, at the task level, right?
Right, sure.
And then, of course, we start to talk about custom attributes associated with that field, like what type of field, you know, data, and sorry for the lack of control on my mouse. I got to step on its tail. But we can use single line of text, multiple lines of text, right? So we can have, you know, lots of text here. Or lookup tables or formulas, right? Now, depending on how we build the field might depend on how it's used in the OLAP Cube, right? So standard text fields would just capture data and be used that way to just allow people to write it, you know, type in whatever they want. On a lookup table, I would have to predefine the values for it. So if I selected lookup table, I might have to build the lookup table first, and you can see that we have a number of these, like roles and other things. So I'll pick one of these. And then I could define what, you know, values I might want as a default value and other things associated with that lookup table.
Right.
Now,
and of course, what's key about this is I think there's only certain types of fields that will show up in our OLAP Cube, which is where we're headed. Like if you just put a description field, right?
Yes. In the previous versions of Project 2007, you know, you used to have to build a lookup table or an outline code, and then those would show up in your OLAP Cube.
Right.
Now, Matt was playing around earlier, as he usually is, and and built some other fields. So there are fields, and again, we want to make sure that we define where in our level of data capture we want to use them by the project, the resource, or the task, and then of course define the type. And by defining the type of data that we want to capture, where we want to capture it, may depend on your results and whether it appears in the OLAP Cube or not. All right?
Well, and that's kind of the next key piece, right, which is even if you define these fields and populate them, doesn't mean they're going to show up in your reporting database, which is where the OLAP cubes live, right?
Right, right.
So that's kind of where we gotta go to next, I would imagine.
So we'll get over there in a second, and then
Okay.
the last part of this field definition is defining the department. Now, in Project Server, you might have more than one group working on your Project Server, and maybe you want to keep your custom fields separated by the group that uses them, right? So in other words, you might have engineering, might have these sets of custom fields, and then software development has a different set of custom fields that they want to capture. Well, you can use the department field to segregate those custom fields so that if someone was to save their project file, they would only have to fill out the fields that are appropriate for that particular project in that group.
Sure.
So the department is a new thing that came in 2010. And really kind of gives us the ability to create custom fields, but now actually make sure that the right users use the right ones, right? Okay. So, and of course, then we define how it's displayed, either as a data or a graphic, right? So in other words, if I wanted it to be some sort of graphical indicator for my custom field, I could do that and then build a graphical indicator. And we're not going to get heavy into how to build formulas. I think we've done this on several shows. And again, if you have questions about this out there in the audience, definitely check in with us or look for some of our previous shows. And then, of course, the behavior. Is it controlled manually, or do you want to control the field by a workflow? And, of course, if we build a workflow, we can actually have other information happen based off the field and the selection that you might pick in the field based on its lookup table. So, in other words, if you picked role and the role happened to be engineer, maybe my workflow is going to process a certain way based on that selection of that field.
Sure.
Okay? So I'm not going to, as I said, I'm not going to save that, but we'll kind of call this cancel. But that's how I would build a field. Now,
and just to be clear, John, just so we kind of have context for this, you don't necessarily have to do this in order to support business intelligence. You may be using it just to, manage your project center list and have different attributes. However, it's important to point out that they're here and that you can use your custom codes or custom fields in your reporting, assuming that we, enable that, right? So this is kind of step one.
Right, exactly. So that is, in fact, step one, right? So assuming that you wanted to capture data that's different than the project out of the box, like here's a project department, it's a project field, it's not required, it comes out of the box, it's already in there, and it's up to you to predefine it with the values that you want in your departments, right? Secondly, once we build these fields, we then need to make sure that the cube builds so that we have the appropriate fields available to us, right?
Sure.
So the next thing we want to do is build our cube.
Right. So again, just because you built a custom field doesn't mean that it's going to be in these OLAP cubes, which is our reporting database. That's the data that's consumed in the Business Intelligence Center, or it's most of the time is.
Well, or through the Excel services.
Right, exactly.
Right. So we have built a cube in our particular database, and you can see that we've been successful at it, and that's always a good thing, right? All right. I thought I selected it, but there we go. All right. So here's our OLAP Cube, right? Now, in the OLAP Cube, we can also specify departments so that they can slice and dice the data based off the values in the departments. So here's our departments. So again, we said that we might use a project department field, and you can see we've predefined sort of a lookup of the departments that we want. So we can restrict the cube or certain cubes to certain departments, right?
Right. Yep.
We can also do the same thing with resource departments. So if we wanted to be, have specific things around resource departments versus project departments, we can specify either one of those. All right?
Sure. So that allows you to just have certain types of essentially department-specific data in those fields, or have only those departments have access to that cube, basically.
Well, and again, those assuming that you've created custom fields, right, and they were department-specific, you may only want that department to be able to slice and dice that data.
Right. Sure. Makes sense. Okay.
We're also going to build our cube based on the earliest project start here and the latest project finish. So we're talking about actually having the first project in our database's earliest start and our latest finish. Matt, you need to give me my controls back. Thank you.
Sure, go right ahead.
We're sharing a mouse today, so you got the tail, I got the head. All right? And then, or you can specify a specific date range. So if there's something specific that you want to limit the range of the cube to like 1 year, you could actually define that here. And then the last part of our cube update is how frequently do we update it. And you can see we have not updated ours. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. You did a cube build here probably shortly ago, 4 hours, matter of fact. And, here was its original start date, and it updates at 11 o'clock p.m., right? So, and we can see that the current server date is this particular time. So we might update this periodically, and then, of course, we can set those settings if we check that, or we can just update it manually. However, it does require a fair amount of server horsepower to update the cube data, depending, of course, on the number of projects and the other things that you have in there. So, you might want to do it during off hours, right?
Sure. And just to be clear, obviously the intent is that, we build the cube when we want to get fresh data. So it's what you might call near real-time data, which is to say that the data that's in our draft and published databases for Project Server doesn't appear in our reporting database, which is where we're going to look at the stuff in the Business Intelligence Center, until the cube has been refreshed or rebuilt, right? So sometimes you'll build it overnight. You can certainly build it manually. We're building these manually right now just to kind of make it easier to control. So you just have to be aware of the fact that new data, new fields, that are added to the project published database or draft database don't appear in the reporting database for reporting until after the cube has been built or rebuilt.
And that's a good point. Is there are 4 databases basically that exist with Project Server: a published, a reporting, a draft database, and then what's the other one? I was lost train of thought there.
Reporting, draft, and well, there are 4 that I'm getting 2013 in my head now, but there are 4 of them.
Yeah. Well, anyway. So the
the archive is the other.
That's the archive database, right? So I knew there was 4, and so basically with our reporting database here, it's the published data that gets populated when you save your project and publish it, right? And that goes into the reporting database, and that's where the OLAP Cube slices the data from. Okay?
John, I'm just while you're moving on to the next page, I'm just going to note that there are a couple of questions online. They're specific to the department's fields, so I don't want to get too kind of lost in that. But you can just select a department was one of the questions. You just select it. The other question was, can you do multiple departments? And the answer is yes, but it's not exactly as easy as all that, because the department field is actually stored as a string. So I don't want to get kind of lost in that, but there's some kind of things you got to watch out for if you're going to look at doing multiple departments. Generally speaking, all or one is kind of the easy answer. Okay, but let's not get distracted by that. Let's keep moving. And what are you going to do? You going to build a cube or? Field definitions. Field definitions.
Field definitions?
Configuration of the cube?
Yes.
There you go.
So in here, we now that we've kind of got some fields associated with our cube and we've done some building process, we can define the fields that we want to appear in the cube itself. So in other words, if you didn't want to report on some of these, you can actually select one, and you can remove it or take it out of the cube, and that will happen on the next cube build, right?
Right.
Or you can remove them all or add them all, and you can see that, you know, most of ours were added over, and there's 44 over here for us to be able to slice and dice data for, right? So again, we can add them by just clicking on them and moving them. The same thing is true of resource fields. You have, you know, your custom resource fields. You can move into the cube, task fields, assignment fields, and so forth. So you can really get down into the assignment level data, you know, like who's working on what task at what time, right? So that type of information is really important for us because, as we all know, Project out of the box as a desktop tool really doesn't give us quite as much flexibility around that type of data, assignment data anyway, that we might be able to get out of the cube. Now, you can also create measures for your cube data. A measure is different than a dimension. A dimension would be a pivot table selection, so it almost lets you slice and dice based on that particular dimension. A
like
measure,
your X and Y, like your columns and rows.
Yeah, columns and rows kind of thing. Right. A measure might be an attribute about one of the dimensions. So here we have some cost data as a specific sample measure that was created, and that's also been added to the cube. All right,
so and you kind of think of those as numbers or things you might add, or
like
values.
You know, typical things that are typically are measures that are out of the box might be tasks like work fields, right? So you might actually have a work field or an actual work or actual cost. Those are measure fields. They report some sort of data where the project actually gives you the ability to sort of slice and dice your column and rows off of that data.
Dimensions, right?
All
okay.
Right? Okay.
So the idea here is that if you have built a custom field, that you would see it in the top left, and you'd need to move it to the right.
To the right.
Left box to the right box in order to include it in the cube, right?
That's correct.
Here.
Now, so we've been talking about custom measures and custom, you know, dimensions. However, as you can see in the lower section of this, there's also a bunch of out-of-the-box built-in measures. So if you wanted cost, work, earned value baselines, and you wanted to have all 10 or 11 baselines, you could basically put those all in your cube too. And this is also new to 2010 as well. So there's some really cool functionality around the built-in measures. Before you couldn't choose them. Now you can actually choose to have more than one baseline in your cube. You used to just get the you know, baseline 0.
Sure. Okay.
And then, of course, if you don't like any of those, or you like all of those, but then you wanted to do your own custom measures, you can create MDX expressions down in the lower section here to basically formulas to create your own custom measures on data that you might want to have. So if you had 2 fields and you wanted to do something with the 2 fields and create your own formula for that, you could use an MDX expression to build that field into your measures down below. And of course, you can slice these by task, non-time phase, you know, timesheet data, issues, risks, any of the, you know, typical functions that you might want to have. And again, specify which cube you want that data to be into. All right?
Right. So that's really key, just to take a look at that list, because just to remember the structure, which is that we have a reporting database, right? So that's where all of the reporting comes from. But within that database, there's all these different kind of cube types, if you will. And so you can set them up to have specific fields in them. And then, of course, you can also build, you know, multiple databases if you want to. So you could have a different database for a different department and have each of those cubes be populated in different ways with different custom fields, that kind of stuff. So it's very flexible in that sense.
Absolutely. And as, you know, we built one cube, right?
Right.
We could build another cube with a different set of data in it. So you could actually have multiple cubes out here where you might...
Databases, yep.
Is that the way you want to call them? You want to call them databases? I want to call them cubes.
OLAP database name, so this is the database, and then the cubes are inside it. But that's kind of...
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. All right. So multiple databases where you could have different cube data in them, right?
You got it.
That's sort of the underlying... Now you know what's under the hood, right?
Right, and again, it's important to know that this is where your data is coming from, so you got to do this first.
Well, yeah, and that's the key element here. Without this, none of the BI or the Excel services is going to report very much, because that's really where the data is coming from, and this is really how you're slicing and dicing your database. Anyway.
Well, it certainly makes it easier. You're right. I mean, in fact, when we get to BI, we'll see that you can actually report against any data set. It doesn't have to be Project Server. It doesn't have to be Project OLAP Cube. You could even, if you wanted to, use BI to report against the published database, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but it is possible. So the idea with setting up the cubes is it's set up with the measures and dimensions and the sort of three-dimensional pivot table type of data that's easier to work with. So that's kind of what we want to do there in general.
Right. So so I'm going to start off over here now that we have a little bit about that and talk about the sample reports that come out of the box. So when you install Project Server, basically you pick a language, obviously. So as I picked English, so let me go back here. You can see there are multiple languages associated with the Project Server environment. So I'm going to look at the English reports because last I checked, that's the only language I had at least some semblance of, right? And and these are sample ones that come out of the box, and you can see Matt has created a couple of new ones in here called MPUG Resource Capacity and MPUG Timesheet Actuals. Right? I'm going to bring up a simple project list, and so I'll click on the simple project list. And you can see that when I do that, I get the Project Center projects, per se, and the owner associated with them in sort of my Excel format, right? So sure. I can basically define, what this report looks like. And again, this is one of the reports that comes out of the box. So you can really kind of, poke around with these and define them the way you want, and even put in some of the fields here if you wanted to build a custom. And I think this is about where Matt wants to pick up, if I recall. Is that about right?
I guess I could pick it up here. And just to be clear, that this actually is, it's essentially an Excel report. It's just Excel in the browser. So it's what we call Excel services, where basically you're getting Excel-type functionality, but it's right here in Internet Explorer. So, you still get drop-downs and labels and filters and sorting and all the kind of stuff that you kind of think about in Excel. We've got some filters up here, et cetera, that I guess are, these are enterprise project types. So it really kind of is Excel, except that it's for the sort of report consumer, so that, they get the view, and of course, we could have charts and stuff like that up here, but it's embedded in the browser, so you can kind of get viewing data and get some interaction, like some of the filters and stuff like that. Now, what you can do if you have the right privileges is you can actually then create or modify or do a save as from an out-of-the-box report this actual report by opening it in Excel. And so if I click on the Open in Excel button, then of course Excel is going to open, and I'm just going to enable the content here. And of course now what we get is now we're really in Excel. And as you can see, it's basically a pivot table. We've got these are the fields that are in the OLAP Cube that was built, right? So, I'm not going to go through a whole lot of stuff around Excel pivot tables, but basically the idea here is we're viewing the data in the reporting service, in the reporting database. So the data is not actually in Excel, okay? We're actually using what's called a data connection. And I can just show you these right now real quickly. If I go back to the Business Intelligence Center, you can see there's a thing here called Data Connections. And what's actually happening here, again, just drilling into English, you might not get all these languages all the time. Let's drill in here. So this is really just a standard library. It's just like any document library, but it's a library full of data connection files. And these, again, come out of the box and are installed.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. They come out of the box here, so
right. You don't have to build them. That's
right. You don't have to build all these data connections, so that's the cool part about this. These are ones that come out of the box and really make the functionality of Excel simple to use right from this, out of the gate.
That's right. So what's really happening here in Excel is we've got Excel running, But you can see here, if I go to data connections, really what's happening is it's using that project server simple project list data connection. And what Excel is basically saying is, go get data using this data connection. And of course, this data connection, as it's defined over where we saw that library, is, okay, go to the reporting database and use this OLAP Cube to populate the data. So there's no data in Excel. It's using the data connection to connect to the reporting database. So we can then, of course, modify this, make changes, I don't know, maybe, add a project status date or something like that, whatever we want to do, save or save as, and then this report will become available to other users back in the browser.
Right.
Pretty simple, straightforward. So, that's kind of the first piece. Again, we won't spend a lot of time in the Excel area. I think it's pretty straightforward in terms of, as long as you know pivot tables, and as long as you can, your connections are there, you have the right permissions, you can simply, I'm going to not bother to save this, you can simply go to the library, as John mentioned, pick out a report, and this is, certainly one of the easiest ways to do it. Whoops, go to your sample reports and find a report to start from, pull it up, and then again start editing it in Excel. You'll be looking at the reporting data. Pretty straightforward. Here's another one that I built earlier today. Again, same thing. Here's my data tab, and it's just a pivot table. Oops, come on, give me the pivot table. Well, it is a pivot table that is connected to the database. So pretty simple stuff. Okay. Now we're going to actually take this in another direction a little bit. I know we also have.
Hey, Matt, before we take it in another direction, does Kurt have announcements to make at the half?
Well, I was just getting there, John. We were going to actually take a quick break here since we're about midway through already. Leave it to Mr. Kirk if he wants to go ahead and make a couple of announcements, and we'll be right back with Project Talk. Mr. Van Tine?
All right. Thanks, guys. I just want to quickly cover off. We do have some great events coming up over the next month. I want to highlight our certificate series that we've got started off. Starts off next week. It's our project scheduling series. So go out and get registered for that. Members of MPUG can attend this series, 3-event series, free of charge. So it's 3 2-hour sessions for a total of 6 PDUs. So go out and take a look at that. We've also got some other great sessions scheduled. We've just scheduled the next session of Project Talk for December 19th, which will be a preview of Project 2013. So that's out there as well. So with that, I'll pass over to Matt and John to finish off here.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Van Tine, and welcome back to Project Talk. I had a topic slide here somewhere. Let's see. What is it? I missed it. Oh, yeah, okay. Our topic today is Smarten Up with Business Intelligence, getting the most from your project server data. And once again, if you'd like to participate in the show, ask a question, or offer a comment, simply type it into the chat panel. And if you'd like to join the conversation live and on the air, type in your comment or question, then raise your hand using the Raise Your Hand tool. And when you hear your name, we'll unmute your mic so you can join the conversation. And, of course, anyone who participates live and on the show will receive a stylish MPUG t-shirt or other great prize. Okay, so we're going to keep going here because we got just like so much stuff to cover here that I don't want to get too crazy about this, but let me get to
There was a little question related to the fields, so I'll kind of get past this. It was a question regarding, and so I'm just going to kind of read it. It said, can we show an example of a calculated measure, an MDX expression? Since those are kind of, those are like building custom formulas, so very similar to what we did in one of the previous shows before. So I didn't want to get into that today. However, if you do have some questions, definitely email us those or post them up on our website, the MPUG website rather, and then you can and we'll monitor that and get you that expression through that if that's
Excellent.
Something.
Great idea. Yeah, okay. Use the forums. Sure, post it in that.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay, great.
Because that's a little bit more in depth than we we'll have time for, and we really want to kind of cover the reporting piece.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and do that. We've sort of seen the Excel piece, but what I think what's really cool and what is I think going to make it really visually appealing is to use some of this performance point stuff. We haven't talked about performance point report before, I don't think, on the show very much. So we're going to actually show you how to build a performance point dashboard with a scorecard and KPIs and all that kind of stuff. So,
so we'll actually drill into connecting with a cube and...
Yeah, we're going to do all of that, really fancy stuff, you know. So,
right.
but it's not that hard once you kind of see what's going on. But I wanted to at least show the structure real quickly so we understand kind of how this works. Basically, what we're going to do first is we're going to build a BI dashboard, business intelligence dashboard, and that's essentially the page, right? It's the page inside the Business Intelligence Center that contains stuff. And then within that page, we can have a scorecard or even multiple scorecards, okay? And within a scorecard, we can have one or more KPIs, key performance indicators, okay? So we need to understand the structure so that we kind of know what the pieces are and what the terminology is, and why can't I build a scorecard? Why can't I build a KPI? I don't have a scorecard. How do I get it in there? That kind of stuff. So this is one structure that we want to look at so we can kind of show you how to do this and be able to get something up on your project server that will start to look pretty and have those cool KPIs and all that kind of stuff. All right?
And Matt, help me out here, but we've covered the Excel piece, right? So,
right.
And of course we can, and just to kind of refresh you, we have the Excel reports that come out of the box. We can save them as any type of report we want, and we can point those via any data connection to whatever fields in the cube we want to use. Is that correct?
That's correct, and the same thing is true here. And by the way, we pulled up that Excel as kind of like its own page. You can also put Excel services reports inside these dashboards if you want to.
Oh, cool. So let's get to it then.
All right. So let me see if I'm in the right spot here. So we'll kill the slides and bring up our project server again. Hello. Oh, there we go. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the Business Intelligence Center top page and just let that load. And by the way, this is just a sort of standard page. Once you kind of get to know Business Intelligence Center, you can get rid of this. These are just kind of fancy web parts. So you can make your top page of Business Intelligence Center whatever you want. In fact, if you just kind of have a single division or department or whatever, you can format this page and put the dashboard right in here if you want to. You can really do anything with this page, just like the PWA homepage. It's this is the out of the box with some information about how to get started. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to go over here to this performance point content. And again, this is just a library, right? And you can see we've kind of built some KPIs and scorecards and stuff like that just as we were kind of playing around on this this new hosted environment that we're working with from BMO. So this is a library. You can see there's KPIs, there's scorecards, there's reports, and there's dashboards, and there's other types of content as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually go to the items ribbon, and we're going to create a new item within the performance point content library.
So this is a little bit of a step process, right?
Yeah,
is this like step one in our step
yeah,
3 process?
Once you've got the cube built, right, once you've got the cube built, yeah, you're going to do the first step. You can see all the different types of KPI content. So these are basically content types, if you're familiar with those in SharePoint. Mm-hmm. And we're simply going to create a performance point dashboard. I'm going to start with the dashboard because that's going to give us our sort of framework to put our scorecard and our KPIs inside, okay?
All right. So this is sort of step one in the road to recovery.
That's right. Yeah, you could say that, right? I don't know if we're going to get to step 12, but we'll see.
Well, we only have 3, so that's good enough.
Yeah, that's good, right? We'll try to keep it to 3.
We usually fall off the wagon after 3 anyway.
It's so true. 4, maybe 4.5. Okay, so now if you recall, if you go to any library and you do, new item, and it might be like a Word document and it will pop up Microsoft Word, well, the same thing is true here. We're going to create a performance point dashboard, so it's going to pop up the dashboard designer. So you can see here it's loading dashboard designer, and here's our dashboard designer, and of course it knows that we want that dashboard type of content, so it automatically pops up the template here. And I'm just going to create a 2-column dashboard page. This is essentially the page level, right? So we'll just create a 2 columns, say OK. And there's our 2 columns. So this is essentially the template, I guess, or the page itself really is what it is. And we're just going to call this, we'll just name this, so it's over here on the left pane here. We're just going to call this the Project Talk dashboard, okay? So we'll just name that so we can discriminate and find it from other things. So again, there's our left column, there's our right column, and we now have this dashboard page. Now, of course, we've got to build the pieces that go inside this, right?
Nice.
So we're going to now start from sort of the bottom up. We're going to go to the other end of the spectrum. We're going to use our create ribbon, and we're going to create a KPI, a key performance indicator. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to pick a blank KPI. We'll just kind of build it as we go. And there it is. There's one thing I forgot to do. Let me go back here. Before we get started with that, we also want to pick out a data connection. So we're going to go to our data connections.
I was going to say, don't we need to connect?
Yeah, I know.
Our data KPI there?
I forgot. So we need the data connection. So we have a couple here that were predefined, but I'm just going to show them to you. This is the project cube. So I'm going to double click on that just to show you what the data connection looks like. Now, there are a couple of...
Hold on. These are the same connections, or these are new connections that we're building to the same cube that the Excel services use.
That's correct.
Perfect.
That's correct.
Great.
Okay.
And it's using that string that's right there?
Right. It's using the connection string to identify which OLAP cube we're going to get to. Okay?
Right.
So this is the one, and of course the database is in here. So there may be times you may find that you need to know, what's the connection string so I can get to that database. Mm-hmm. Other cases you could use a standard connection. Some of it depends on whether you're hosted or not, and whether you have the right access to your SQL database and things like that. So it can vary the authentication method as well. But a lot of times it will be with the connection string. And
okay.
What you can see here is I can test the data source just to make sure I can get to it. So I've got a successful connection. That's great. Okay. And then once again, this connection string is to essentially the reporting database. And if you remember, we were looking at the cubes that John was working with over in the cube build. Well, here they are again, right? So if he put a custom field into one of these, like the project cube or whatever, then that custom field is going to show up as part of this cube. So same set of cubes that we have, okay?
Nice.
Yep. So oops, I picked the wrong one. We're just going to use this one here, right? Mm-hmm. And again, I'll just test that data source to make sure that's all good. Okay. So now we have a data source established up here. Now I can go back to my dashboard.
Now we might actually get some data in your KPI.
Yeah, maybe we'll get some data this time. We'll pick a blank KPI.
It usually helps, dude.
Yeah, it does. It does.
To get some data.
So we've got a KPI now. The way these KPIs work is basically we're going to compare some type of target number to the current number, like how far away are we? And there's different types of measures, different types of KPIs. You can have, gas gauge and different types of one. We just picked a simple kind of, stoplight type of indicator here.
Nice.
And again, we're not going to do anything real fancy in terms of formulas because, we don't want to get kind of lost in that, but we just want to show you this environment so that you can understand how to start building these dashboards and stuff, right? So let's name this KPI. We're going to call it the Project Talk, the PT, cost KPI. That's what we'll call that one, okay? Except without the caps, cost KPI. And I always like to put KPI in so I know what I'm looking at, even though the indicators kind of help me. So here what we want to do is use some of these drill-ins to define a couple of things about this. So, for instance, the number format, since it's a cost, I'm just going to click on that and, we'll set that to currency, right? So we'll set that to currency for both the actual and the target, all right? So we'll just go ahead and set those as currency. And then we're going to go over to our data mappings. Now, right now this says fixed values, which means that it's not really connected to anything. It's just some number that we might type in. So I'm going to change that. And once I've clicked on that link, you can see it says change source. So I'm going to change the source. And these are the sources that we have available to us right now. It's this current KPI, which these are just manual entries. But here's that data connection. I called it the project cube. So you can see project cube and its type analysis services.
Right,
so we've got our project cube here. That's where the cube data is coming from, again, the reporting database. So I'm going to use that.
So that'll get updated every time we build a new cube.
So it'll be updated every time we build a new cube.
Exactly. I love the sound of that, man.
And then, of course, what we're seeing here is, here's those fields that were built inside that cube. So these are the actual project server fields, right?
The measures.
The measures, exactly. So actual cost, I'm going to use for my actual value here. What's my actual cost? That's going to be my actual cost. I'm just going to say let's just sum those because I don't really want to do any other kinds of aggregation. We'll just sum it up. Say OK. And now we've got actual cost. That's going to be our actual measure and how we compare that to the target.
Okay.
We'll do the same thing for the target here. Again, I'm going to change the data source to use the cube. And this time, I don't know, let's use cost, right? Plan cost, why not?
Okay,
sure.
Plan cost or baseline cost,
Yeah.
any one of those.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll just, again, sum this and say OK. All right, so now we've got our number format. We know we're going to have stoplight indicators. We now have two values that we're using that are actually from the cube. And let's also just change this. We might have a case where we have children, like drill-ins and children of children. So I just want to make sure we're summing, not averaging the dollars, right? So we'll just go ahead and sum that, and the same thing for the target. So we're just getting real sums instead of averages or something else. Okay? And we'll now have these cost KPIs basically set up in terms of the data sources. Now, the other thing is you can see these scoring patterns. So this tells us, so what's green and what's yellow and what's red, right? And of course we can change these, like kind of sliding them around, or we can, you know, type in the data here, or we can set the scoring pattern and indicator. So here I'm going to say that I don't know, I think it's increasing is better as the one, but particularly I want to say that I want to use band this based on the numerical value of the actual, not some normalized value or some other thing.
Okay.
And then I'm just going to next through, we're going to pick our stoplight, but you can see here there's lots of other types of indicators, right? We've got gas gauges, and we've got other, you know, flags, and half a pie, quarter of a pie kind of things, progress bars, those are pretty cool. So, you know, there's all types of different KPI indicators that we can use, and of course they'll behave a little bit differently depending on the kind of measure that you use or what it is you're trying to really show. Cylinders, those are really cool, right? So we're going to stick with our stoplights just to keep it simple, our these types of guys. We'll go ahead and click Next and Finish. Okay. Now I think that'll work out okay. So we're going to go ahead and save this just so we can not lose our work. And we now have our KPI.
And we're this is pretty cool, and we're getting closer to our time, though. So
I know. That's why I'm like cranking away here. So if you remember our slide, we have a KPI. A KPI goes inside a scorecard. So we got to build a scorecard.
Right. So
we're
let's
going to create an analysis services scorecard. We're just going to say OK. We're going to use that same. Here's the same cube, so it makes sure it's connected properly. And we're just going to next through here. I'm not even going to select the KPI right now. I'm going to do that later. I'm just going to next through so we get just a nice blank scorecard so you can kind of see what's going on. Now, a scorecard, as I mentioned, can have multiple KPIs in it. It can have lots of different things. Let's name this scorecard. So we'll call it the Project Talk Cost Scorecard, and whatever we want to call it. And just type that in here on the top left. You can see those are my items.
That's my phone.
And now we can start to drag stuff in. Oh, is that the warning that I'm almost out of here?
That is the warning.
So on the right side, my details, you can see there's my KPIs from the Performance Point Content Library, which is where the stuff is sitting. I'll go ahead and drag in my cost KPI. So that'll be my top row. And then I can go to my dimensions, and once again, there's all the dimensions from the cube. So let's say
dimension meaning our slice and dice versus
our slice and dice, right?
Yeah, versus our fields that were measures.
Exactly. So I'm going to just bring in the project list here. I'm going to drop that in. That'll essentially be my rows.
Yep.
And there's the data, sample data of what I'm looking at. I'm going to choose all project lists because that'll give the user the ability to expand and collapse this if we want to.
Okay, perfect.
So we'll go ahead and say OK. And if we go ahead and then expand this, it loads, and there's my KPIs, actual target. You can choose to display these numbers or not, but you can see there's my red and greens and all that stuff.
Nice.
Okay? So we've got our PT cost scorecard. I'm actually going to rename this and call this the PT project cost because I'm going to build one more because I just think it would be cool to have two. So we'll do, if I could type properly, the PT project cost scorecard. Let's go ahead and build one more. I'm going to use the same KPI, but I'm going to change the scorecard a little bit. So we're going to create another new scorecard. And again, we'll just create a blank one. and I'll use the data source again, of course, right, our good old project cube, and just next through that. I'm not going to bother to select the KPI. I'll do that later. Just next through, I'm not going to bother with any of the, you can filter the stuff and, you know, do a lot of things here if you want to, time filters, etc. You know, we can do different things to this so that we can use only just a subset of projects, maybe department level or something like that. But I'm not going to bother with all of that right now because, you know, I don't have a lot of time to do that.
Right,
So we'll getting tight. Finish. We'll go ahead and finish. And now I get another one, right? And we'll just call this the Project Talk, let's call it Owner Cost Scorecard. So I want to see how my owners are doing against cost as well. So we'll just build another one here. And once again, I'm going to drop my cost KPI in. Only this time, instead of using the project list, let's use the project owner for the rows, right? So we'll just drop those in there.
Okay.
And there's all my owners. So we'll say, okay, well, I still want to give you the all owners so you can choose which ones you want. Obviously, I could just choose to do certain ones.
Yeah, and we probably wouldn't use necessarily generic teams here, right? Because some of those are teams.
Really good point. Really good point. So here's what we're going to do with that. I wanted to make it easy, right, to just kind of drop it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to right-click on the KPI itself. And if I go to my view settings, one of the things that I can do is I can filter the view so we don't show the empty rows.
Nice. Okay. That'll save our teams from
going crazy. Exactly. So I say okay, and what you'll see now is the red ones are the ones that aren't going to be displayed.
Okay.
So it'll just show us Amy and then, you know, Carol, whatever, right? So the red ones will get filtered out. So again, I just right-clicked to filter or use the view settings for the KPI, and I just use the filter thing to say, don't show me the empty rows. Okay?
Okay. Everybody's quiet today. Not too many questions out there, so if you do have a question, don't forget to, you know.
And you better make it quick, because we only got about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, well, that too.
Okay, so, again, remembering the structure, right? Let me just kind of go back to the slides real quick here so we remember that, if I can find them again. Sorry to blast through all those.
You should have just stayed there.
I blew it. It's back here. So remember that we've now built those the KPI. We've got two scorecards, actually. I kind of actually drew this wrong. And then we're going to have the dashboard. So now, if we go back to our dashboard designer, we now have two scorecards. We've got our owner scorecard. We've got our project scorecard, both showing the same KPI, essentially. We're just grouping it differently in terms of the rows. We've got the KPI that we built here, right?
Yep.
And now we're ready to build our dashboard.
Okay.
So again, this is the page level, right?
So this is the page that will display the two cards, the two KPIs, and the two scorecards.
It'll display the two scorecards. In this case, each of those scorecards has the same KPI, but it's you know, scoring in a different way.
It's grouped in a different way.
That's right. So I'll go ahead and drop down our scorecards here on the right side. You can see there's the two scorecards that I've built. So let's do the owner one. We'll just drag this right into the left. And we'll take the project one. We'll drag it over here on the right. And you can see there's several things that we can do here if we were creating connections, but we can see we already have the connections here. There's a number of things that you can do. I'm going to just leave it like this for now. Going to go ahead and save.
Okay.
And when we do that, we're ready to go to our big go button here. And you can see deploy. Now, one of the interesting things is if you're on the KPI, you can't deploy a KPI just by itself, right?
Right.
And even if you're on a scorecard, you can't deploy a scorecard by itself. So the scorecards or KPIs or whatever you're going to stick in the dashboard, you could put Excel in here too if you wanted to, but it's really the dashboard that you deploy here. So whatever you're going to stick in this dashboard, it could be performance point KPIs like we created, could be other reports that we have that may be in here already, right? Here's the list of reports. I'm not connected to the right database, but you might have a list of reports here, filters, all that kind of stuff. That's at the dashboard level here, if you will. Okay?
Okay.
So, having done all that now, and I'm on the dashboard itself, of course, now I can use the big go button here and deploy. And when I do, it's connecting to SharePoint, and you can see it's loading, and says, well, where do you want to put it? Here's all the sites. I could put this anywhere. So I could, for instance, create a dashboard and put it at a project site level, or maybe it's just for that particular project that I want certain KPIs. So I can put that anywhere. Of course, this one is more of a kind of portfolio level.
Right.
So I'm just going to stick it right.
Projects.
Yeah, it's all projects, right? So I'm going to just stick it in the Business Intelligence Center under the dashboards library. Okay, but again, I could create a project-specific set of KPI or a project-specific dashboard with project-specific KPIs and deploy them that way if I wanted to. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and click OK, and you can see it's deploying to the SharePoint site. It pops up SharePoint, and there they are in the Business Intelligence Center.
Nice.
Okay. So I've got my dashboard here with my 2 scorecards, which of course include the KPIs that we built here. In this case, this is by project owner, so I can see Carol's in the red because she hasn't spent any money yet. I'm not sure I got the colors right, but I think you get the idea.
Right.
And then, of course, our project list. And notice, of course, it's not showing the generics like you mentioned, John. It's only showing those ones that don't have the blank values. Right. So there's our scorecard. And, of course, if I go back to the Business Intelligence Center, where does this thing live? Well, it actually lives in here, in the performance point content. You can see the dashboard. There's my Project Talk dashboard.
Okay.
And so I could choose to, embed that right on my home page if I wanted to, or I can go to the dashboards here, and it's potentially a multi-page dashboard, so it has its own little folder here. But I'll just go ahead and drill into page 1, and of course, there's our report.
Nice.
Not bad.
No, not bad at all. And so there's a couple of little questions. Where do I get more information about BI training? Right. So where do we get? Because some people want to know more about this, and there's we need to kind of talk about the information there.
Well, secondly, of course, you can always start with the MPUG forums, and there may be some other information on BI inside the MPUG sites, of course. Right. They're in mpug.com. There's a fair amount of, there's some help kind of here, and of course your typical TechNet stuff or MSDN, those kinds of things. And then of course there's also I don't know, calling someone like PM providers to get more information. You could do that. What do you think, John?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I think we could do that. I think we could do that. So there's lots of information here about, and I do think that some of the help on this page will guide you to that. And there's a fair amount again at MSDN related to BI and dashboards and Excel services reporting. The key element, however, is you need to understand your data and understand your data connection, and so that when you get to actually sit down to build the report here, you really know where you are going, where your cube data lives, where your custom fields have been saved, and have they been sliced and diced into your cube. Because you can get all the way to this point, and frankly, you can want to build a cube or build a report, and you're not sure where to go to find your cube data, right?
Absolutely. So you got to kind of keep all the pieces together here, and that's why we're here today, to help you kind of figure it out. And unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today. So don't forget to report your PDUs for today's show. The PDU code for today is MPUG Web and Learn 102512, and mark your calendars and join the conversation again on Wednesday, December 29th at 12 o'clock Eastern Time for another edition of Project Talk. Our featured topic, we think, is going to be Project 2013 preview here on the MPUG Web Radio Network. Project Talk is brought to you by PM Providers, driving results with project management solutions, and by BMO, specializing in PPM solutions built on proven Microsoft SharePoint and Microsoft Project Server technologies, delivering cost-effective enterprise-grade hosted services for businesses of all sizes. Check out BMO's hosted PPM solutions at bmopro.com and get a 10% discount on BMO's cloud services using referral code PMProviders10. Project Talk is a production of MPUG and PM Providers. The content, descriptions, opinions expressed during the show are solely those of the participants and do not reflect the opinion of MPUG or its sponsors. If you have comments regarding Project Talk, you can send an email to projecttalk@mpug.com. Our online producer is Kirk Van Tyne. I'm Matt Davis, and along with my co-host John Riopel, we'd love to thank you for tuning into Project Talk here on the MPUG Web Radio Network.